Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're unpacking the wild story of a mobile accessories business that shot up to a meteoric rise only to lose absolutely everything. It's a classic tale, right? But man, it plays out over and over again in the business world. We're going to look at a young entrepreneur named Ali. He built this incredibly successful enterprise completely from the ground up, but then one single, very specific miscalculation brought the whole empire crashing down.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of Ali's story, we really have to ask ourselves a fundamental question. How exactly does a booming enterprise just collapse overnight from one mistake? I mean, it's pretty easy to see why a business that never gets off the ground fails, right? But when a company has massive momentum and record profits, what actually causes the wheels to fall off? Keep this question in the back of your mind as we go through this, because the answer is almost always tied to something incredibly subtle.
Let's track how this actually played out over time. We get a really clear roadmap from Ali's humble beginnings back in 2008 all the way to his total bankruptcy in 2020. The ascent was super fast. In just 4 years, he went from one single shop to absolute peak success in 2012. But then, there's this agonizing 8-year slide into total ruin. This failure wasn't some sudden overnight explosion. Nope, it was a slow bleed, all caused by decisions made right at the absolute height of his success.
So how did he get there? Well, the journey to success was fueled entirely by Ali's hard work and sheer honesty. He opened a single mobile accessories shop in 2008, worked hard to build trust with his customers, and word of mouth just spread like wildfire. He really knew his product line inside and out, and more importantly, he knew exactly how to treat people.
By 2012, the business was absolutely booming. We're talking record-breaking sales across multiple cities, monthly profits that just kept climbing, and he even successfully launched his very own proprietary brand. It was a massive win. But there was a hidden danger lurking in this phenomenal streak. Ali started developing this growing belief that his company could literally never fail. And as we all know, unchecked success, it usually breeds a whole lot of hubris. But right as the company hit its absolute peak, a massive shift happened in the broader market. A new competitor basically arrived out of thin air and completely changed the rules of the game by offering online sales. And honestly, this was the exact moment the ground shifted right beneath Ali's feet.
This is a direct collision of two completely different business philosophies. On one hand, you have Ali's rigid reliance on traditional physical retail. I mean, it's how he made his money, so he's super rooted in it. But on the other side, the competitor is agile. They recognized the customers were starting to really prefer the convenience of just having stuff shipped directly to their front door.
Now get this, even when his own managers clearly saw the threat and strongly advised him to launch an online store immediately, Ali stubbornly resisted. He was totally trapped in the success of his past, you know? He just couldn't visualize a future that looked any different from what had worked so perfectly for him back in 2008.
And here is that exact moment of hubris I mentioned earlier. He completely dismissed those changing habits, stating definitively, people will always buy from physical shops. He fundamentally believed that human behavior would just remain static, really just to validate his existing business model. But let me tell you, fighting against the tide of consumer behavior, that is a battle you are going to lose every single time. So, over the next 2 years, the real-world consequences of that denial started to hit hard. Sales steadily dropped, and the customer base just kept shrinking as shoppers flocked to the super convenient online competitor. Yet, Ali was still in deep denial. He kept convincing himself that this was just some temporary dip in the market.
Let's break down the actual mechanics of this failure, because instead of adapting, Ali actually doubled down on his mistake. Misdiagnosing those falling sales as just a temporary issue, he went out and took massive bank loans to open even more physical stores. He assumed a larger physical footprint would magically bring back customers. But instead, those new stores just brought massive new overhead, rent, salaries, bills, all while foot traffic was at an absolute all-time low. He effectively tied a massive financial anchor right around his own company.
When the crushing pressure from the banks finally forced Ali to launch an online business, well, it was just way too late. The banks started calling in their debts, the pressure became unbearable, and Ali finally surrendered and built the online store. But in the digital world, timing is literally everything. By the time he showed up to the online party, all the seats were taken. The competitor hadn't just taken his sales, they had fully captured customer loyalty. Consumers were already totally habituated to the competitor's website, their fast shipping, their interface, so Ali's delayed launch, it was basically a ghost town.
Which brings us to 2020. The massive burden of debt finally forced the company into bankruptcy. The entire empire he built from scratch was just gone. But from the ashes of that bankruptcy, we get a vital business autopsy. We get a real lesson that can absolutely save others from suffering the exact same fate.
Looking back on it all, Ali realized his biggest mistake wasn't a lack of capital or a bad product. It was his flat-out refusal to adapt to changing times. He admitted that his biggest mistake was ignoring market changes, and that adapting is way more important than initial success. He finally recognized that having a great product just isn't enough if you aren't delivering it the way the modern market actually demands. The ability to pivot when the rules change, that's the ultimate metric of business survival.
So, the ultimate takeaway from this explainer is that survival in business relies entirely on accepting and evolving with the market. It's really a binary choice: adapt and survive, or ignore change and perish. The market simply does not care about your past successes. It only rewards the people who meet the customer exactly where they are going. Your mindset has got to be as fluid as the market you serve.
It's super easy to judge Ali in hindsight, right? But honestly, human nature makes every single one of us prone to this exact same bias. So ask yourself, are there digital shifts, new technologies, or changing customer habits in your own industry that you're secretly hoping are just a passing phase? Take a really hard look at your strategies today. What changing trends are you currently ignoring? Remember, don't let the comfort of yesterday's success blind you to tomorrow's reality.